Welcome back to another episode of Tabs, where we are talking about business strategy. And today we got a throwback. We got Elise Chan, old coworker, good friend, on today to talk all about product marketing. So, Elise, before we get started, do you want to do a quick introduction?
Yes, I would love to. So, like James said, my name's Elise Chan. I'm a product marketing manager at a company called Infosec. So, I primarily focus on product marketing for our technical training platform for cybersecurity professionals. So, I've been doing this about a year and a half now. But, like James said, we worked together when I was in my previous role, where I was doing a lot of like digital marketing consulting, client success work and producing my Tibet Tuesday videos, which some of you might recognize me from. So this is definitely not new to me. It's been a hot minute though, so I'm excited to be back out there making some LinkedIn videos.
Cool. Thanks, Elise. So, I guess to start the big question, this is something where I personally don't have a lot of knowledge on this. So, when you said this is a topic that you're passionate about, I thought that'd be great to have you on. So I'm familiar with marketing, digital marketing, all that kind of stuff, but product marketing, that's a term people probably heard before, but probably don't know exactly what that is. So do you want to start by talking about what is product marketing?
Yes, and it's kind of funny because even in the product marketing world, you're not going to get the same definition across the board. It's a pretty varied function. And it's really going to depend on kind of the organization size, the products and services they're offering, and honestly, just kind of the structure of the marketing and sales teams. So I think really the best way to explain product marketing is to really boil it down to what I think is most consistent from product marketing position A to B to C, whatever variations might be out there. So really there's kind of three different levels. So product marketing, really what you're doing is looking to understand the markets that your organization plays in. And then the deeper detailed level there is then understanding the clients that you serve best within those markets. And then really the third and final level that you really want to drill into, which I think is the foundation of product marketing, is then understanding how you serve those clients' needs in a unique way compared to the alternatives out there that they could, also be considering. And with that knowledge, you're then really empowered to build out strategies and frameworks and resources that then enable other teams at your organization. And that's usually your fellow marketers, sales teams, and product teams.
Cool, thanks. So I guess the follow-up question to that then is how is that different than general marketing? So some of that stuff talks like, talking about learning about the product and how it fits with the customer and trying to align product customer fit falls into general marketing stuff. But how would you say that product marketing really is different than normal marketing people might already be doing?
Yeah. So again, I think it just depends on your organization and how your teams are structured and how many resources you have. Honestly, product marketing is kind of a luxury more often than not of larger marketing teams. Because, if you're on a small marketing team or you're even just a solo business owner, I mean, this is stuff that you're probably already doing. You just haven't been calling it product marketing. But I think when product marketing is a really formalized function within an organization, it does differ from what other marketing professionals are doing, just in the sense that it's really setting the foundation and I would say the parameters within which the rest of the marketing team is working. So it's really helping the rest of marketing understand, who are we actually targeting with our campaigns? What type of thought leadership and resources should we be developing? What does a marketing qualified lead look like? So really just kind of setting the foundation and those parameters. And then really the only other piece I would call out here is that product marketing can be unique from general marketing in the sense that it's very cross-functional. So it's really common for product marketers to be working with sales and product teams just as much, if not more, than the rest of marketing. So one example would be working really closely with product teams on, product roadmaps and feature release schedules to really help develop, go-to-market strategies for those product changes.
Cool, that makes sense. And a fun fact for the audience too is that Elise works with my brother, who is a programmer, and does some of the software stuff too. So I know firsthand that is true. I think it's a really good point. I think a lot of marketing teams try to work with sales teams and work with operations teams. A lot of them do a really good job of that too. But I think you made a really good point there about how it is more of like your day-to-day job is much more involved with the operations team and the product owners of what you're doing your marketing on, more than this kind of general like strategy to promote the product in general too. So that kind of makes sense framed like that too.
Mhm.
And this is a big question, a loaded question. And you kind of hinted at it already, but like, what are the main components of a product marketing strategy? Like, if you were to put together like a strategy document for product marketing, what would be the main things you'd say you'd have to kind of check off that list to be successful with it?
Yes. So I will say there are two things that are really the kind of core components of a product marketing strategy, because everything else will stem from these two things. So it's going to be buyer personas and your product positioning framework. And this is really, again, setting the groundwork for any other, strategies or resources you're building out for other teams within your organization to leverage. And just to give a little bit of background about, what buyer personas and product positioning frameworks typically look like. Kind of a quick rundown here. So buyer personas, that's really where you're working to understand, your buyers. So where do they work? What type of roles are they in? What's their actual involvement in the buying process? Because it's likely that there are multiple people, if you're in the B2B space anyway, involved in that process. So what's their specific role? They might be an influencer, they might be an evaluator, they might have the final purchasing power. So understand their role, and then make sure for each of those different types of buyers at your kind of target client accounts, what problems are they trying to solve, right? What does success look like to them? And then kind of my favorite piece here is understanding the true alternatives that you're coming up against, in the buying process. And then you can use all of that information, and there's kind of some supplemental activities you can do to really dig into each of those areas in more detail. But with that insight, you can actually start building out your positioning framework. And this is really going to get to the heart of why you as a unique, offering and provider are the best solution for these clients. And so what you're going to do is to break down specific challenges and use cases of your product or service for each of these different clients you have and these different buyers, and then put together how you are uniquely addressing, their challenges and what success will look like if they partner with you. So if you're able to also include an extra space where you're showcasing, proof points of, hey, yep, here's this use case, here's this challenge we're solving, here's why we're solving it in a unique way compared to these alternatives that you're considering, and here's proof of how we have done that for other clients that that look like you, that have similar needs. So that's really kind of the basis that you can then leverage and share with other teams internally. So your sales teams, your marketing teams understand how to talk about your products and services in a way that's really targeted and, more importantly, super relevant for the people that you truly want to do business with. So that's really the starting point. I would say that those are really kind of the two core components of a product marketing strategy. But there's a lot of other supplemental things you can be doing. So really on the regular, you want to just be interviewing existing clients, doing win-loss interviews, competitive research, things to really drill into all of these areas and make sure that over time you're keeping your buyer personas and that positioning framework really fresh and up to date, because those things are changing all the time, right? So those aren't static documents. Those are really living documents that will change as the market and your clients and your company changes.
Cool, that makes sense. And I guess digging a little bit deeper in that, because I think there's some things there that a lot of marketing people especially would want to know or get some advice from you on too. I think personas a lot of people in marketing are familiar with, maybe not specific to like a product, versus like the entire company, but the product positioning framework, and what you kind of talked about there, how does that relationship look like when you are talking to like your operations teams or your product owners? What kind of information are you guys passing back and forth? Or how do you facilitate that relationship, and how are you providing value, and how are they providing value back to you?
Yeah, so it's kind of a two-way street, right? So when you have this foundation of understanding, your buyers, and as they become clients, right, like what success looks like to them, how they're actually using your product, but then just generally the best way to speak about your product and the value it's adding. That's something that is really helpful when your product team, comes to you and says, hey, we have these features on the roadmap. Here's kind of when they're going to launch. because those are the things you're going to leverage, when you're putting together that go-to-market strategy. So, who even cares about these changes, right? And what unique value is it adding to them? Who needs to know about this? How can we position this in a way to increase the adoption of this new feature or this new service? How can we really enable our teams internally, like sales and client success, so that they feel confident talking about this new thing that we're offering? But then, it kind of also builds off of that, right? So if you're adding new products, new services, you kind of have to start this process from scratch a little bit, where it's like, okay, we have an idea, right? Like, here's this thing we think might be valuable. Let's go on and actually find out, again, who cares? What's the value it's adding? And then you can really pass that information back to the product team to make sure that they're really headed down the right path with their longer term vision. So there's kind of like the more immediate feedback and back and forth of that go to market and kind of feature or service launch. And then there's that longer term kind of vision of making sure we're all aligned and headed in the right direction, by making sure we're actually adding unique value to the markets that we want to play in.
Cool. That makes a lot of sense. I guess me thinking too, a lot of, you kind of talked about the first part of it, how like a lot of marketing and sales teams work with operations teams or product owners to talk about new features, new benefits, that kind of stuff too. But I think that what you said, the last part there, is really important, of that kind of the product team is thinking about doing something new, or they're looking for some feedback on should they be doing something, should they not be doing something. And if you on the marketing side can kind of be the voice of the customer, and your customer really well, you can kind of turn that back around and be like, oh no, I think we should do this because that might be helpful because of X, Y, and Z, or here's who is actually going to be using the product and here's what they want. Can you guys do that too? I think is a really important thing.
Yeah, and I would add real quick there too,
Yeah.
James, like there also is this interesting dynamic where the product team by nature is going to be a lot more focused on their users and their user personas, and the value that your end user is getting out of your offerings and why they're engaging and kind of adopting what you're offering could look a lot different than the people in those buyer personas, right? So it's okay if there's some disconnect there. It's really making sure that you're giving those different audiences what they actually need. So there might be differences, and on paper it might seem like, oh, like this isn't going to work out, but if you dig a little bit deeper, there actually could be a way where you just position your offerings differently in the marketplace, but then your client success and support teams can then position it a bit differently to the end users.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. Because you're marketing it, you're not doing the implementation on your side of things too. That makes sense. So the big question people might have right now is and you mentioned it earlier, but I'm a one person marketing team, or I'm not even a marketing team. I'm just on the sales side of things. You mentioned that product marketing really is typically something that's a more specialized marketing role than a bigger marketing team. But are there things that someone who might be, not in a product marketing role can get started with that might be a good kind of launching off point, or at least kind of like a basic foundational level thing you recommend them doing?
Yes, 100%. So I think kind of the quickest win that adds tons of value to like anyone that can take the time to do this would be interviewing existing clients. So even just by interviewing 6 to 10 of your existing clients, you can hopefully start to notice some trends appear. So if you can really figure out, hey, maybe our current contact wasn't involved in the buying decision, but who was? And then reach out to those people and learn more about, what were you looking for? What were kind of your evaluation criteria? What resources were helpful for you when you were actually trying to weigh your options? What was the sales process like? So that you can really start to focus on the buying side of things, but then back to kind of your existing client and main contact, you can learn a lot more about their specific use cases. How are they measuring success? What does a return on investment look like to them? If you're providing an offering where there's some type of ongoing renewal, right? Like what would cause them to renew or not renew? So understanding those things is also really important. And then finally, my favorite question to ask is, hey, if what we're providing you just disappeared tomorrow, what would you do, right? Like what would be the next best thing, or what would you turn to as an alternative? And that can give you a really good idea of, again, what your true competitors are, because it's not actually always company XYZ that you think is your direct competitor. I mean, it might be that, but it might also be some weird DIY solution that your client just comes up with internally because they're like, hey, when budgets get tight or we're limited on resources, we might just figure this out ourselves. And yes, that might not be the best solution, but that might be, what you're competing against and what you're trying to showcase your solution as being better than what they might come up with. So you can really learn a lot just from talking to a handful of existing clients. And then after that, once you start noticing some trends, kind of lump them together, right? Like, okay, this group of clients is kind of using our product or leveraging our services in these couple of ways. And this group over here might be, leveraging it in a little bit different of a way. And that's awesome because now you can start to map out different use cases, like literally make a table, be like, okay, here's some defining characteristics of this client group over here. Here's some trends I'm noticing. And now I can actually make this table that says like, okay, use case or problem that we're helping them solve. How are we solving that in a way that's unique and better than that true alternative that they mentioned before? And then what's the actual outcome, right? Like what's success? How can we prove it? And having that insight can totally change, again, like who you're targeting with your marketing campaigns, how you're talking about your products or services in your marketing and sales collateral. It can literally help you optimize your current product and services and change your roadmap. So it's really impactful across the board. And taking time to talk to people and go through all this, it's not a small lift, right? But it doesn't really take any super special skills. It just takes, some time and going out and actually talking to clients. And I think it's really fun. That's my favorite thing to do. I would do that all day, every day if I could. So I would really encourage, either that one person marketing team, a sales rep, a business owner, to really have that be something you dedicate time to and kind of that first step in optimizing your product positioning, your marketing, your sales approach, and your current offerings.
Cool. That's a really good suggestion. I like that spicy question of like, what else would you be doing if you didn't use our product is really good for existing customers. I hadn't heard that one before.
I think I stole that from April Dunford. She has a really awesome book called Obviously Awesome, and it talks all about optimizing your product positioning and messaging.
Cool. Nice. Follow-up question to that, since I know people are going to ask that too, especially in the marketing role. What's your process for getting customer interviews lined up? Do you work with your sales team on that? Or how does that kind of work out as far as just like getting customer interviews in front of you? Because I know some people struggle with that, especially in marketing roles. They might struggle with getting their sales team to offer up customers for interviews. Have you found that be an issue, or how do you guys handle that?
Yeah, so I kind of have the luxury of we have a dedicated client success team that's separate from the sales team. So it's really nice because I can essentially just pull a list of all of our active clients, kind of go through, look at who kind of the clients that I think stand out that might make for a good candidate to talk to. And then I actually connect with their client success manager and say, hey, here's what I'm hoping to learn. First of all, do you think this is a good person for me to talk to? Do you think they'd be willing to do it? And then we can work together to craft out an outreach. I've sent those emails myself before. Sometimes the client success managers think, the client would be more receptive if they send the email, do an introduction. So it's not just some random person called Elise reaching out. So I kind of have the luxury of having that process. But you might be in a situation, right, where you do have to work with the sales rep. And I think if it's already an existing client and not an open active deal, I think there would be less resistance to that. But I would say if you can get your hands on a list of active clients or current clients, that's really helpful because it is a little trickier if you kind of put the work on the sales rep or the client success manager and say, hey, send me a list of people I should reach out to, right?
Yeah.
It's really nice for you as a marketer or business owner or whatever position you're in to just have that list, see all of your current clients in one spot, and just have that insight, because I didn't have that for a while. And once I had that, I was like, wow, this is a game changer.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's an ideal world if you can get a list, especially if it's like as you know, I'm a big fan of the 80/20 principle. If you can find a list of like your top customers who also fit like that target persona, so you're really like zeroing in on like the best customers that would be the best to interview for as far as like feedback goes. All that being said, sometimes the not best customers are good for interviews too. You might get some information out of that too. I think that's good, and I think just kind of not, and I come from the sales world, but I think that sometimes salespeople can be kind of like, I don't want you talking to my customers kind of thing. But if you include in the process, that can be helpful too sometimes. So this is super helpful, Elise. I thank you for sharing your knowledge with the world. Any outgoing thoughts before we sign off?
Oof. No, I would just say, I mean, what I shared is again pretty foundational product marketing. So if you're a product marketer, it might be sound kind of basic, but my hope is that anyone in more of a general marketing role, a sales role, a business role, I mean, these are all things I think that will enable, teams across an organization to just do their jobs more effectively. So I really think doing those client interviews is going to have, a huge impact on the work that you and your teams are doing. So yeah, I think everyone should be doing it.
Cool. Well, good. That's awesome. Well, thanks again for joining us, and I appreciate you sharing your knowledge, and it was good to see you again.
Yeah, thanks, James.